The massive crystal chamber stretched upward for nearly a kilometer, its walls pulsing with soft blue light that shifted colors as different alien species spoke. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their designated sections, each area modified to accommodate their specific environmental needs. The Aquarians floated in their water-filled spheres, while the crystalline beings from Xerion stood motionless on heated platforms that kept their silicon-based bodies at optimal temperature. At the center of this grand assembly, General Kickstar of the Zephyrian Empire stood tall, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of supreme confidence. His metallic blue skin gleamed under the chamber's lights, and his three eyes focused on the holographic display showing a small yellow star in the galaxy's outer spiral arm. Honored members of the Galactic Hegemony, Kickstar's voice boomed through the translation devices. We gather today to discuss the final expansion into Sector 7742. This region contains valuable trade routes that connect our three largest commercial zones. However, there remains one small obstacle. The hologram zoomed in to show a blue and green planet orbiting the third position from its star. Scattered laughter rippled through the chamber as several species recognized the primitive world they had all dismissed long ago. The humans, whispered Counselor Vexani of the Taldari Collective, her tentacles writhing with amusement. Surely the great Zephyrian Empire is not concerned about those backwards creatures. More laughter echoed through the chamber. The humans had been observed for centuries, ever since they first started broadcasting radio signals into space. Every major galactic power had files on them, primitive beings who still used chemical rockets and fought wars with projectile weapons. They had barely managed to put a few small stations around their home planet and had never ventured beyond their immediate stellar neighborhood. Kickstar raised one of his hands for silence. The Hegemony Council has decided that this sector must be brought under proper galactic authority. The humans currently occupy a system that sits at the intersection of three major hyperspace lanes. Their presence, however insignificant, represents an inefficiency in our trade networks. Elder Quintar of the ancient ethereal race floated forward, his translucent form shimmering. General Kickstar, your reputation for swift conquest is well known. 17 systems have fallen to your fleets in the past decade, but surely deploying your full military might against such a primitive species would be excessive? The Zephyrian general's mandibles clicked together in what his species considered a smile. Honored Elder, the Zephyrian Empire believes in decisive action. My preliminary analysis suggests that a single battle group, perhaps 5 dreadnoughts and their escort vessels, would be more than sufficient to secure the human system. Their most advanced weapons appear to be crude nuclear devices. Their fastest ships barely achieve a fraction of light speed using primitive reaction drives. Counselor Morvac of the Silicon Confederacy spoke up, her crystalline voice ringing like wind chimes. Have we made any attempt at diplomatic contact? Standard hegemony protocol requires. The humans have shown no indication they are even aware of our existence, interrupted Admiral Zeth Cole of the Void Runners. Their radio transmissions are chaotic and undirected. They send entertainment, broadcasts into space as if the galaxy were listening to their primitive music and fictional stories. They appear to have no unified planetary government, no faster-than-light communication, and no understanding of galactic civilization. The chamber filled with the various sounds that different species made when amused. To most of the assembled representatives, the humans were little more than in curiosity, a species that had achieved basic spaceflight but remained completely isolated and ignorant of the greater galactic community. Far across the galaxy, on the third planet of that dismissed yellow star, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Sol Defense Force, deep beneath the Colorado Mountains. The chamber around her hummed with activity, as hundreds of technicians monitored displays showing the positions of every ship, station, and satellite in human space. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from his position at the communications console, we're receiving the weekly intelligence update from Deep Station Alpha. Chen nodded, her weathered face showing no emotion as she reviewed the data streaming across her personal display. Deep Station Alpha sat beyond the orbit of Pluto, hidden in the shadow of a captured asteroid. To any casual observer, it appeared to be nothing more than space debris, but it was actually one of humanity's most advanced listening posts. "Any changes in the alien fleet movements near the Proxima sector?" Chen asked. "Negative, Admiral. The Zephyrian battle group is still holding position approximately 40 light-years from our border. However, our agents embedded in the galactic communication networks report increased chatter about territorial expansion." Chen allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had no idea that humanity had been monitoring their communications for nearly 60 years. What they assumed was a primitive species broadcasting random entertainment was actually an elaborate cover for one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in galactic history. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the command center, carrying a datapad filled with the latest technological assessments. As the head of the Human Science Directorate, she was one of the few people who knew the full extent of humanity's hidden capabilities. "Admiral, the final tests on the new stealth coating are complete," she reported. "Our ships are now effectively invisible to standard galactic sensor arrays. The aliens' detection technology is surprisingly primitive. They rely heavily on active scanning rather than passive sensors. And our defensive preparations? The outer system perimeter is fully operational. We now have over 3,000 automated defense platforms positioned throughout the asteroid belt and outer planets. Each one is equipped with kinetic accelerators and particle beam weapons that exceed anything in the aliens' arsenal by at least 2 generations. Chen nodded approvingly. For over a century, humanity had been preparing for this moment. While the rest of the galaxy saw a primitive species struggling to establish basic space colonies, the truth was far different. Humanity had achieved breakthrough after breakthrough in technology, driven by the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe and that first contact might not be peaceful. The secret had been kept through careful misdirection. Humanity's public space program used deliberately primitive technology, chemical rockets, basic nuclear reactors, and simple radio communications. Meanwhile, their hidden military and scientific installations developed fusion drives, quantum, computers, and faster-than-light detection systems. "Admiral," Rodriguez called out again, "we're detecting increased Zephyrian fleet activity. It appears they're mobilizing additional ships." Chen walked over to the main tactical display, which showed a 3-dimensional representation of local galactic space. Red markers indicated known alien positions, while green dots represented human assets, both the visible colonies and stations that the aliens knew about, and the hidden facilities that they didn't. "How long before they reach our system if they decide to move?" she asked. "Based on their standard hyperspace drives, approximately 6 days, answered Commander Park from the tactical station. "However, our long-range sensors indicate they're still using the old hegemony jump technology. Their ships will drop out of hyperspace at the system's edge, exactly where we expect them." Chen turned to address the entire command center. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that our long period of preparation may be coming to an end. For decades, we've allowed the galaxy to underestimate us. We've let them believe that humanity is weak, primitive, and isolated. That assumption is about to become their greatest mistake." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Every person in the command center had trained for this moment, but the reality of potential first contact with hostile aliens was still sobering. "Remember," Chen continued, "our goal is not conquest. We don't want to rule the galaxy or destroy entire civilizations, but we will not allow anyone to invade our space or threaten our people. The galaxy is about to learn that some species are better left alone." The Zephyrian advance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, with the confidence of predators entering a sheep pen. 5 massive dreadnoughts, each over 2 kilometers long, emerged from the swirling energy of the hyperspace rift, accompanied by 20 escort cruisers and 40 smaller patrol ships. Their dark hulls bristled with weapon arrays and shield generators that had conquered 17 star systems. Admiral Kethmore stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominant, Pride, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical displays. According to their long-range sensors, the system appeared exactly as their intelligence had predicted. A few primitive space stations around the inner planets, some basic mining operations in the asteroid belt, and simple chemical-powered ships moving between them. Begin the standard conquest protocol, Kethmore ordered his communications officer. Broadcast the surrender demand on all frequencies. These humans should be grateful we're giving them the chance to submit peacefully. The message went out in dozens of languages, though the Zephyrians doubted the primitive humans would understand any of them. The standard demand was simple: immediate surrender of all military assets, acceptance of hegemony authority, and preparation for integration into the galactic civilization as a protectorate species. Minutes passed without any response. Kethmore's mandibles clicked with irritation. Even primitive species usually manage some kind of reply, even if it was just confused radio chatter. "Sir," called out sensor operator Lixana, her voice uncertain. "I'm detecting some anomalies in our sensor readings." "What kind of anomalies?" "There appear to be objects in space that our sensors are having trouble identifying. They're registering as asteroids, but their positions don't match the stellar cartography data, and some of them seem to be moving." Before Kethmore could respond, his communications console lit up with an incoming transmission. The signal was crystal clear, transmitted on a frequency that indicated advanced technology, and when the message began playing, every alien on the bridge stood in shock. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Defiant, representing the Sol Defense Force," came a voice speaking perfect galactic standard. "You have entered sovereign human space without permission and transmitted what appears to be a demand for surrender. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." The bridge fell silent. The human was speaking galactic standard, the complex language that required years of study and neural enhancement for most species to master. But more than that, her tone was calm, professional, and completely lacking in fear. "Please identify yourself and state your intentions," the human voice continued. "If you're here for peaceful first contact, we welcome the opportunity for dialogue. If you're here for other purposes, I suggest you reconsider your position." Kethmore recovered from his shock first. "Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicate these creatures are primitive. How do they know our language?" His tactical officer, Commander Vextor, was studying his displays with growing concern. "Admiral, I'm detecting energy signatures that don't match anything in our database. Some of the objects our sensors identified as asteroids are generating power readings consistent with military installations." Before anyone could respond, space around the Zephyrian fleet began to shimmer. Dozens of objects that had appeared to be asteroids, space debris, or empty space itself suddenly became visible as their camouflage systems deactivated. Weapon platforms, each one bristling with unknown technology, surrounded the alien fleet in a perfectly coordinated defensive formation. "This is impossible," whispered Lixana. "Those platforms weren't there a moment ago. Our sensors should have detected them." The human captain's voice came through the communication system again, still maddeningly calm. "I see you've noticed our defensive perimeter. Please don't be alarmed, these weapons are not currently targeting your vessels. However, I feel I should mention that you're currently surrounded by approximately 250 automated defense platforms, each one capable of destroying a ship your size." Kethmore's three eyes focused on his weapons officer. "Can we get target locks on those platforms?" "Negative, sir. Whatever stealth technology they're using is interfering with our targeting systems. But sir, I'm also detecting something else. There's a ship approaching our position and it's moving faster than should be possible." On the main display, a sleek vessel appeared, its hull a dark blue-black that seemed to absorb light. The ship was smaller than a Zephyrian cruiser, but moved with a grace and speed that made the alien vessels look clumsy by comparison. It came to a stop just outside weapons range, close enough to demonstrate that it could have approached undetected, but far enough away to avoid seeming immediately threatening. "That," Captain Vasquez's voice announced, "is my ship. I thought it might be helpful to meet face-to-face, so to speak." Admiral Kethmore activated his own communication system, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. "Human vessel, I am Admiral Kethmore of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your primitive vessels." The laugh that came through the speakers was not what any of the aliens expected. It was warm, genuinely amused, and completely without fear. Admiral Kethmore, I appreciate the introduction. I'm afraid I have some news that might surprise you. First, we've been monitoring your communications for several decades, so we're quite familiar with the Zephyrian Empire and the Galactic Hegemony. Second, our vessels are not primitive. In fact, our technology is considerably more advanced than yours. And third, you are currently trespassing in human space, which makes you the ones in violation of galactic law. Commander Vextor's voice was tight with disbelief. Admiral, our intelligence was completely wrong. These humans have technology that surpasses ours by generations. Their ship's drive system alone represents breakthroughs we haven't achieved. The situation was becoming more impossible by the minute. Kethmore had built his reputation on swift, decisive action against inferior opponents. But nothing about this encounter matched his expectations or his training. "Human captain," he said, his voice slightly less commanding than before. "You claim to have been monitoring our communications. If that's true, then you know the power of the galactic hegemony. Even if your technology is advanced, you're one small system against the might of the entire galaxy." "Actually, Admiral, that brings up an interesting point," Captain Vasquez replied. "We've been monitoring galactic communications and we've noticed something fascinating. Most of your member species achieved spaceflight because they needed to escape environmental problems on their homeworlds, or because they were naturally curious explorers. Humans achieve spaceflight for a different reason entirely." "And what reason is that?" "We're hunters, Admiral. We've always been hunters. We explored our world because we needed to find new prey. We developed tools because we needed better ways to hunt. We reached for the stars because we had conquered everything on our own planet and needed new challenges." The bridge of the dominant. Pride was silent as the implications of those words sank in. Most galactic species had evolved from prey animals that developed intelligence to avoid predators. The idea of a species that had evolved as predators and then achieved spaceflight while retaining that mindset was terrifying. "I'm going to make you an offer, Admiral," the human captain continued. "Turn your ships around and leave our system. Report back to your superiors that humanity is not as primitive as you believed, and that we're interested in peaceful contact with the galactic community. We have much to offer in terms of trade and knowledge sharing." "And if we refuse?" Kethmore asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew the answer. "Then you'll discover why no successful predator species allows other predators to invade their territory." The communication channel closed, leaving the Zephyrian bridge in stunned silence. In 60 years of military service, Admiral Kethmore had never encountered a situation where his overwhelming technological and numerical superiority had been so completely negated by an opponent's preparation and capabilities. His sensor operator's voice broke the silence. "Admiral, I'm detecting more ships approaching. Multiple contacts, all using the same advanced stealth technology. They're everywhere." As Kethmore watched his tactical display, dozens of human ships began appearing throughout the system. Each one moved with the same impossible speed and grace as the Defiant, and each one represented technology that his fleet couldn't match. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Kethmore found himself outgunned, outmaneuvered, and completely out of his depth. The primitive humans had just proven that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one everyone underestimates. The emergency session of the Galactic Hegemony Council convened just 18 hours after Admiral Kethmore's fleet retreated from the Sol system. The massive crystal chamber buzzed with anxious chatter in dozens of different languages as representatives from the major powers tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Elder Quintar of the ethereal race floated at the center of the chamber, his translucent form flickering with agitation. "Order! We must have order!" His telepathic voice echoed in every mind present. "We have received Admiral Kethmore's initial report, but before we proceed, I want to hear from our intelligence services." Director Mazathul of Hegemony Intelligence stepped forward, her 8 spider-like legs clicking nervously against the crystal floor. As a member of the Arachnid Collective, she was considered one of the most analytical minds in the galaxy. But her usual confidence was nowhere to be seen. "Honored representatives," she began, Her voice translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "I must report that our intelligence files on the human species appear to have been incomplete." A wave of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. The hegemony's intelligence network was supposed to be infallible, monitoring every spacefaring species in the galaxy for signs of technological advancement or military buildup. Counselor, Vexani of the Taldari Collective raised her tentacled arm. "Director, explain incomplete. Are you saying the humans have been hiding their true capabilities?" "More than hiding," Mazathul replied, activating a holographic display that showed intercepted footage from Kethmore's encounter. They appear to have been running a deception operation spanning several decades. While we observed primitive chemical, rockets, and basic nuclear technology, they were simultaneously developing stealth systems, advanced sensors, and weapons technology that exceeds our current understanding. The hologram showed human ships moving with impossible grace and speed, their hulls seeming to bend light around them. Even more disturbing were the massive defense platforms that had appeared from nowhere, suggesting a military infrastructure that no one had detected. General Kickstar, who had originally volunteered to handle the primitive humans, stood with his forearms crossed defensively. "This is impossible. Our long-range sensors have monitored that system for over a century. We've cataloged every ship, every station, every piece of technology they possess." "Apparently not," came a new voice from the chamber's upper levels. Dr. Zenthara, the galaxy's leading xenobiologist, descended on her floating platform. Her crystalline body pulsed with colors that indicated deep thought and growing concern. "Dr. Zenthara," Elder Quintar acknowledged, "you've had time to analyze the intelligence data?" "I've done more than that," she replied, her voice carrying an ominous tone. "I've reviewed everything we know about human evolution, psychology, and social development. What I've discovered is troubling." The chamber fell silent as one of the most respected scientists in the galaxy prepared to deliver what was clearly unwelcome news. "Most species in this galaxy evolved from prey animals," Dr. Zenthara began. "We developed intelligence as a survival mechanism to avoid predators. We learned cooperation, technology, and eventually spaceflight as ways to overcome our natural vulnerabilities. This is why galactic civilization emphasizes consensus, careful planning, and risk avoidance." She paused, allowing the holographic display to show images of various galactic species and their evolutionary paths. "Humans are different. They evolved as persistence hunters, predators who used intelligence not to avoid danger, but to become more effective killers. They developed cooperation not for mutual protection but to coordinate hunts. They created tools not to build shelters, but to make deadlier weapons." Admiral Zethkol of the Void Runners shifted uncomfortably in his hoverchair. "Dr. Zenthara, many species went through predatory phases during their evolution." "Yes, but most abandoned those instincts when they achieved civilization. Humans did something unprecedented. They refined them. Look at their history. Constant warfare, competitive sports, exploration of dangerous environments for no practical purpose. They've turned survival of the fittest into an art form. The implications were becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. A species that had retained predatory instincts while developing advanced technology represented something the galaxy had never encountered before. Counselor Morvak's crystalline form chimed with anxiety. "Are you saying that humans are naturally aggressive?" "I'm saying they're naturally competitive," Dr. Zenthara corrected. "They don't just want to survive, they want to excel. They don't just want to explore space, they want to master it. And when threatened, they don't look for diplomatic solutions first. They look for ways to neutralize the threat." Director Mazathul activated another set of holographic displays. "This explains what we're seeing in their communications intercepts. For the past 60 years, we assumed their entertainment broadcasts were simply chaotic noise. But our xenopsychologists have now analyzed the content. Their fictional stories consistently feature themes of human superiority, triumph over impossible odds, and victory against technologically superior opponents. They've been telling us exactly what they are," Elder Quintar realized with growing horror. We just weren't listening. The chamber erupted in anxious chatter as the full scope of the situation became clear. The species they had dismissed as primitive and harmless was actually a predator that had been preparing for galactic contact for decades. Admiral Kethmore, who had been silent during the presentation, finally spoke up. "I've reviewed the sensor logs from our encounter. Their defensive platforms appeared within seconds of each other across the entire outer system. That level of coordination requires communication technology that operates faster than light." "Impossible," declared Chief Scientist Yulbar of the Silicon Confederacy. "Faster-than-light communication violates several fundamental physical laws. So did their stealth technology, their ship propulsion, and their targeting systems," Kethmore replied grimly. "We're not dealing with a species that's slightly more advanced than we thought. We're dealing with a species that's generations ahead of us in multiple fields." Dr. Zenthera's crystalline body flashed red with alarm. "There's something else. I've been analyzing human communication patterns, and I've noticed something that none of our previous intelligence reports mentioned. They have multiple governments, competing economic systems, and frequent conflicts among themselves." "That's not unusual," Counselor Vexani pointed out. "Many species have internal divisions. But humans maintain those divisions while simultaneously cooperating on large-scale projects. They compete with each other constantly, which drives innovation and prevents stagnation. Then, when faced with an external threat, they unite instantly. It's the perfect evolutionary strategy for a predator species." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The galactic hegemony was based on the assumption that advanced species naturally developed peaceful, cooperative societies. The idea of a species that maintained competitive instincts while achieving technological superiority challenged everything they believed about galactic civilization. Elder Quintar's form flickered with what his species considered deep concern. "What are you recommending, Dr. Zenthara?" "Immediate cessation of all hostile activities toward human space," she replied without hesitation. "We need to recognize that we're dealing with something unprecedented. These aren't primitive beings who can be conquered or intimidated. They're apex predators who have been preparing for this encounter for generations." General Kickstar's mandibles clicked with frustration. "You're suggesting we simply accept that a single star system can defy the entire galactic hegemony?" "I'm suggesting that we recognize reality," Dr. Zenthara shot back. "The humans have demonstrated technological superiority, strategic thinking, and most importantly, the psychological profile of a species that will fight to the death rather than submit to conquest. Attacking them would be like attacking a nest of armed scientists who've had a century to prepare for your arrival." Director Mazethul nodded grimly. "Our intelligence assets in the outer regions are reporting unusual activity. Human ships have been detected far beyond their supposed range, suggesting they've been exploring galactic space for much longer than we realized. It's possible they know more about us than we know about ourselves. The revelation that humans might have been conducting covert surveillance of galactic civilization for decades sent a new wave of anxiety through the chamber. If they had been watching and learning while maintaining the facade of primitive isolation, then their capabilities were even more formidable than anyone had imagined." Elder Quintar called for silence as he prepared to make what would be one of the most significant decisions in galactic history. "Based on this information, I propose that we declare human space a restricted zone, pending further diplomatic contact. No military vessels are to approach the Sol system without explicit authorization from this council." As representatives began voting on the proposal, Dr. Zenthara added one final observation that chilled everyone present. "Remember, we only encountered their defensive forces. We still have no idea what their offensive capabilities might be." 3 months after the Hegemony Council's decision to declare human space restricted, General Kickstar stood before the largest military assembly in galactic history. Representatives from 12 different species had contributed ships to what was being called the Coalition Fleet, over 400 vessels ranging from massive battleships to fast attack cruisers. The Council's restriction was a mistake born of fear, Kickstar declared to the assembled commanders via holographic conference. A single system cannot be allowed to defy the combined might of galactic civilization. The humans may have advanced technology, but they are vastly outnumbered. Admiral Torgash of the Molten Rock Federation, his lava-based form contained within a specialized environmental suit, voiced his agreement. My people have conquered asteroid fields defended by automated systems before. Numbers and determination will overcome whatever tricks these humans possess. Captain Silvera of the Crystal Harmony added her support. Our psychic abilities give us advantages in coordination that no single species can match. The humans may be clever, but they cannot outthink a dozen different forms of intelligence working together. What none of the coalition commanders knew was that their entire planning session was being monitored by Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from her position aboard Deep Station Bravo, hidden in the asteroid field between Mars and Jupiter. The station's quantum sensors could intercept communications across dozens of light years, and its AI translation systems had cracked most galactic languages decades ago. Admiral Chen, Kim reported through the encrypted communication channel, the coalition fleet is finalizing their attack plan. They're massing at the neutral station in the Kepler 442 system. Estimated time to our borders is 72 hours. Admiral Chen stood in the primary command center on Luna, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of human assets throughout the solar system. But unlike 3 months ago, the displays now showed the true extent of humanity's military infrastructure. How many ships are they bringing? Chen asked. 437 confirmed vessels from 12 species. They're planning a 3-pronged assault. One group targeting our outer defense perimeter, another aimed at Mars and the asteroid belt, and a third heading directly for Earth. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now wearing the insignia of Director of Strategic Operations, looked up from her tactical analysis. Admiral, their plan assumes we'll fight a defensive battle like most species do. They're expecting us to try to protect fixed positions while they overwhelm us with superior numbers. Chen smiled grimly. They're about to learn the difference between prey and predator tactics. Signal all vessels. Operation Hunter's Moon is now active. Throughout the solar system, humanity's true military force began to reveal itself. What the aliens had seen 3 months ago was merely the tip of the iceberg. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, camouflaged within hollowed-out asteroids, began launching vessels that had been under construction for decades. The gas giant Jupiter, which aliens had dismissed as an uninhabitable wasteland, revealed itself to be humanity's primary naval base, with hundreds of ships emerging from construction facilities hidden deep within its atmospheric layers. On Earth's moon, Admiral Chen watched as the tactical display updated with thousands of new contacts. Professor Martinez, she called to the elderly scientist who had overseen humanity's technological development for the past 40 years. Are all systems operational? Everything is green, Admiral, Martinez replied, his voice carrying satisfaction earned through decades of preparation. The gravitational sensors show the coalition fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge in approximately 6 hours. Our defensive grid is fully charged and all mobile units are in position. Unlike the first encounter, humanity was not planning to simply defend their territory. They were planning to demonstrate exactly why predator species don't simply react to threats, they eliminate them. Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding the UES Retribution, led a battle group of 20 ships that had been hiding in the corona of the sun itself. The extreme environment that would destroy alien vessels was merely uncomfortable for human ships equipped with advanced heat shielding and magnetic field generators. All units, this is Retribution Actual, she broadcast on the encrypted tactical channel. Remember, our goal is not to destroy these fleets. It's to convince them that attacking humanity is a losing proposition. Disable when possible, destroy when necessary, but make sure every survivor has a story to tell. The coalition fleet arrived exactly when human intelligence predicted, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system in 3 distinct groups. Admiral Kickstar commanded the central force from his flagship Inevitable Victory, confident that overwhelming firepower would succeed where finesse had failed. Begin the assault, Kickstar ordered. Target the defense platforms first, then move toward the inner system. Show these humans the price of defying galactic authority. The first indication that something was wrong came when their sensors failed to detect the same defense platforms that had surprised Admiral Keithmore 3 months earlier. The space around them appeared empty, with only a few primitive mining stations and cargo vessels visible on their screens. "Where are their defenses?" demanded Commander Veltar from the tactical station. Before anyone could answer, space itself seemed to come alive around them. Hundreds of objects that had been completely invisible to their sensors suddenly appeared. But these weren't stationary defense platforms. They were ships, sleek, predatory vessels that moved with coordinated precision that made the Coalition fleet look clumsy by comparison. "Contact! Multiple contacts!" shouted the sensor operator, his voice rising in panic. "They're everywhere!" The human ships didn't attack immediately. Instead, they demonstrated their technological superiority by moving through formations that should have been impossible, their vessels weaving between Coalition ships while jamming targeting systems and communications with electronic warfare, techniques that were generations ahead of anything the aliens possessed. Captain Vasquez's voice came through on all Coalition frequencies, broadcast simultaneously in every major galactic language. "Coalition fleet, this is Captain Vasquez of the Sol Defense Force. You are trespassing in human space with hostile intent. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to withdraw, or we will consider you an active threat to human territory." Admiral Kickstar activated his communication system, his voice carrying all the authority of someone accustomed to conquest. "Human captain, you are outnumbered 400 to 1. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." The laugh that came back through the speakers was the same warm, confident sound that had so unnerved Admiral Keithmore. "Admiral, you're not outnumbered. You're surrounded." At that moment, the true scope of humanity's defensive strategy became clear. Ships began emerging from locations throughout the solar system that should have been impossible to hide in. The asteroid belt revealed itself to be home to hundreds of camouflaged vessels. The moons of Jupiter disgorged entire battle groups that had been hiding in their shadows. Even more impossibly, ships began emerging from the sun's corona, their hulls glowing with residual heat but otherwise undamaged. "This is impossible," whispered Commander Veltar. "No species can build ships that survive in stellar environments." The human response was swift and precise. Rather than the chaotic battle that most species fought, human ships moved with the coordination of a single organism. Every vessel knew exactly where every other vessel would be at any given moment, allowing them to execute maneuvers that required split-second timing and absolute trust in their fellow commanders. Coalition ships found their weapon systems failing, as human electronic warfare specialists took control of their targeting computers. Their shields collapsed under assault from weapons that seemed to ignore standard defensive technology. But most disturbing of all was the psychological impact of fighting an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Admiral Torgash, his molten form radiating frustration, opened a channel to his fellow commanders. "They're not just outfighting us. They're outthinking us. Every tactical decision we make, they've already prepared a counter for." The truth was even more unsettling than he realized. Humanity's strategic AI had been analyzing galactic military tactics for decades, using intercepted communications and observed fleet movements to build comprehensive models of how each species fought. When the Coalition fleet arrived, every ship was already programmed with optimal responses to the tactics each alien commander was likely to use. Captain Silvera of the Crystal Harmony attempted to use her species' psychic abilities to coordinate a unified counterattack, but found her telepathic communications being jammed by human technology that interfered with psionic energy patterns. "How do they know about our psychic abilities?" she demanded of her science officer. The answer came in the form of a human marine transport ship that materialized directly behind her vessel. Instead of attacking, it transmitted a message. "Captain Silvera, we've been studying psionic phenomena for 40 years. Your telepathic abilities are fascinating, but they're also detectable and therefore jammable. We'd be happy to discuss the science." 6 months after the Coalition fleet's defeat, Ambassador James Morrison walked through the crystal corridors of the Galactic Hegemony's central station with the calm confidence that had become humanity's trademark. The massive structure, built in neutral space between three major star systems, had been the center of galactic politics for over 1,000 years. Today, it would witness something unprecedented, a single species addressing the combined powers of the galaxy as an equal. The ambassador was not alone. Captain Elena Vasquez, now promoted to admiral, accompanied him as the representative of Sol Defense Force. Dr. Elena Martinez, recently appointed as Director of Human Xenological Studies, carried datapads containing technological specifications that would fundamentally change how the galaxy understood science. But perhaps most importantly, Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as Director of Human Intelligence, possessed information about galactic civilization that most species didn't even know about themselves. As they approached the main council chamber, Ambassador Morrison reflected on how much had changed since that first encounter with Admiral Kethmore. The defeated coalition fleet had returned home carrying tales of human technological superiority that had spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. What had begun as a simple territorial dispute had evolved into a complete shift in galactic power dynamics. The massive doors of the council chamber opened to reveal representatives from 47 different species, all waiting to hear what humanity had to say. But the atmosphere was entirely different from the arrogant confidence that had marked their previous gatherings. These were no longer the voices of supreme galactic authority. They were worried beings trying to understand how their entire worldview had been proven wrong. Elder Quintar floated at the center of the chamber, his translucent form flickering with what his species considered deep uncertainty. Ambassador Morrison, the Council recognizes the sovereignty of human space and welcomes this opportunity for formal diplomatic contact. Morrison stepped forward, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's translation systems. Thank you, Elder Quintar. I appreciate the Council's recognition of human territory and their interest in establishing peaceful relations. Dr. Zenthara, who had become something of a celebrity throughout the galaxy for her accurate assessment of human psychology, spoke up from her floating platform. Ambassador, the Council has many questions about human capabilities and intentions. Perhaps you could help us understand how your species achieved such advanced technology without any galactic contact. Morrison smiled, the expression somehow managing to be both friendly and slightly predatory. Dr. Zenthara, that's an excellent question. The answer is quite simple. We've been watching you for much longer than you've been watching us. The admission sent a wave of nervous energy through the chamber. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably as the implications became clear. For over 70 years, Morrison continued, humanity has been monitoring galactic communications, studying your technologies and learning about your civilizations. While you saw primitive radio broadcasts, we were conducting one of the most comprehensive intelligence operations in galactic history. Director Kim stepped forward, activating a holographic display that showed the locations of human observation, posts throughout the galaxy. Red dots appeared on star maps marking positions that were supposedly empty space, but which had actually housed human monitoring stations for decades. We have listening posts in 43 star systems, Kim announced. We've been monitoring your military exercises, recording your diplomatic communications, and studying your technological developments. Most importantly, we've been learning about your weaknesses. Admiral Zethkol of the Void Runners raised a trembling appendage. How did you hide these stations from our sensors? The same way we hid our defense platforms and battle fleets, Admiral Vasquez replied. Your sensor technology is based on the assumption that anyone trying to hide would use methods similar to your own. We developed entirely different approaches to stealth that your equipment simply couldn't detect. Counselor Vexani of the Taldari Collective spoke up, her tentacles writhing with anxiety. Ambassador Morrison, what are humanity's intentions regarding galactic civilization? Do you plan to conquer us? Morrison's expression became more serious. Counselor, that question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about human psychology. We're not interested in ruling the galaxy. That would be incredibly boring. We're interested in exploring it, learning from it, and competing with it. Doctor. Martinez stepped forward, her scientific credentials carrying weight even among species that were still trying to understand human technology. What humanity offers the galaxy is not conquest, but competition. We want to trade with you, learn from you, and challenge you to become better than you are. But we also want to be very clear about one thing, Ambassador Morrison added, his voice taking on the tone that had become familiar to anyone who had dealt with humans. We will not tolerate aggression against human territory or human citizens. We're happy to compete peacefully, but we're prepared to defend ourselves against anyone who mistakes our civility for weakness. Elder Quintar's form flickered as he processed this information. Ambassador, you speak of competition, but the galaxy has achieved peace through cooperation and consensus. Competition leads to conflict. Does it? Morrison asked. Your own histories show that the most significant technological and cultural advances in galactic civilization occurred during periods of peaceful competition between species. The problem is that you've become so focused on avoiding conflict that you've also avoided growth. He gestured to Dr. Martinez, who activated another holographic display showing comparative technological development over the past 1,000 years. The data was shocking. Galactic civilization had essentially stagnated, with most new developments being minor improvements on existing technology rather than revolutionary breakthroughs. Humanity has achieved more technological advancement in the past century than the entire galaxy has achieved in the past millennium, Dr. Martinez explained. The difference is that we maintain competitive pressure even within our own species. We compete with each other constantly, which drives innovation and prevents complacency. General Kickstar, who had been silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke up. What exactly are you proposing? Morrison smiled again, and this time the predatory aspect was unmistakable. We're proposing to shake things up. We want to establish trade relationships with species that can offer us something interesting. We want to form research partnerships with civilizations that are willing to push the boundaries of science. And we want to compete with anyone who thinks they're the best at what they do. And if species refuse to compete with humanity, asked Counselor Morvac of the Silicon Confederacy, then they'll be left behind, Admiral Vasquez answered bluntly. We're not going to force anyone to change, but we're also not going to slow down for species that prefer stagnation to growth. The chamber erupted in anxious chatter as representatives began to grasp the full implications of humanity's position. This wasn't just first contact with a new species. It was the introduction of an entirely different approach to galactic civilization. Dr. Zenthera raised her crystalline form above the crowd. Ambassador Morrison, what guarantees can you offer that human competition won't eventually turn into human domination? Morrison considered the question carefully before answering. Doctor, the only guarantee I can offer is human nature itself. We're not interested in ruling over beings who can't challenge us. That would eliminate the very competition that drives us to excel. We want the galaxy to become stronger, smarter, and more capable, because that makes our own achievements more meaningful. Over the following hours, the Council listened as humanity outlined their vision for galactic civilization. It was a future where technological stagnation was replaced by constant innovation, where diplomatic consensus was balanced by competitive pressure, and where the fear of conflict was replaced by the excitement of challenge. Some species were horrified by the prospect. Others were intrigued, but all of them understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. As the session concluded, Elder Quintar made the announcement that would reshape galactic civilization. The Council recognizes the Sol system as sovereign, human territory, and welcomes humanity as a full member of galactic civilization, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. But privately, every representative understood the real truth. The galaxy hadn't gained a new member. It had acquired a new apex species that would force everyone else to evolve or be left behind. Ambassador Morrison stood on the observation deck of the human diplomatic ship New Horizon as it prepared to depart the hegemony station. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see alien vessels from dozens of species, many of them already requesting formal meetings to discuss trade agreements and research partnerships. Admiral Vasquez joined him at the window. Sir, are you confident this will work? Some of these species have been stagnant for thousands of years. Morrison watched as a Zephyrian diplomatic vessel approached, carrying General Kickstar's formal request for a military technology exchange.